Hey guys, welcome to Chef O'Clock. I'm Shweta and today we're going to make an onion tomato paste. I know it sounds like a really basic plain onion tomato paste, what's so great in that, but honestly it's one of the most important base curries in Indian cooking. There's no limit to how many dishes you can make with this. It freezes really well and it's really easy to make. So if you've ever been to an Indian restaurant or if you're an Indian and you had Paneer Butter Masala or butter chicken or chicken tikka masala or chole or anything, this would be the base that you start with. So today we're going to make that, and I'll also show you tips and tricks on how to freeze it and how to use it once it's done. Alright, so let's get started. So for this paste, you can obviously add as many spices and flavors that you like, but that only comes to the end. So to begin with, we're going to need onions, we're going to need ginger garlic paste, and we're going to need tomatoes. Now, ginger garlic paste is made from scratch in a lot of Indian homes, but if you can get something ready-made if you're short of time, this works perfectly fine. And of course, I have my timer. I'm going to set it to 20 minutes and we're going to start right away. Let me just get that out of my way. First we need to chop the onions. You can chop them as fine as you like it. If you're not a fan of chopping, then you could even just roughly chop them, cook this paste and then put it in the blender, which is what I'm going to do. I like chopping, but I just want to show you the easiest way this can be done so that you can make this anytime you want. Now you can make this with as many onions and tomatoes as you like. The only important thing you need to remember is that they need to be sort of equal. You can't have about, say, 10 onions and 2 tomatoes. You need about an equal amount of both. Alright, I'm just going to move the onions to a bowl so that I can chop my tomatoes. By the way, it's a fun fact. You can chew chewing gum while chopping onions, and your eyes won't water. But if you know one thing about Singapore, it's that chewing gums are bad here. So I just had to try it out. Again, I'm just roughly chopping the tomatoes because, like I said, I'm going to blend them at the end. If you don't have a blender, if you don't want to use a blender, you can just finely chop them and your work is done. Alright, now the hardest part of the dish is done and we're going to start cooking. So I'm just going to take this over to the pan and then we'll make the paste. So you can cook this in any pan or pot that you have. I'm just using this stir fry pan today. I'm going to add a little oil, and once the oil gets a little warm, I'm going to add the onions to it. Alright, the onions go in. I like to add a little salt to the onions whenever I'm sauteing them so that they just sweat quicker and then you can cook them slightly faster. You don't need to constantly stir it. I was just making sure the onions are coated in oil well. I'm just going to let this cook for a little while, for about a few minutes, and then I'm going to add the ginger garlic paste. If you're a culinary student or if you've ever worked in an Indian kitchen, in a professional kitchen, you'll know how popular this paste is. Once when I was doing my internship in a hotel, I was in the Indian kitchen for about a week or a couple of weeks, and on one day we had to chop 40 kilo of onions and 40 kilo of tomatoes to make this paste, which would last maybe a day. So this is a really popular paste in Indian cooking. Alright, now the onions have started browning. They're slightly translucent and they started browning in bits. It's a good time to add the ginger garlic paste. I'm just gonna eyeball it. So for this much onion I would add about 1.5 spoons. You can add a little more or less as you like. Now once this paste starts cooking on the flame, it leaves a really nice aroma, and that's how you know that this paste is cooking. It's going to splutter around a little bit, but don't worry, that's perfectly normal. At this point, if you feel like the paste, this pan is too dry and maybe you're smelling a bit of smoke, you can add a splash of water just to bring the temperature down a little bit. Now the onions have gone quite soft. If you want to brown the onions a little longer, you can. But once the onions are soft enough, you can just add the tomatoes and cook them. Now all I have to do is wait for this to cook for a little while. You know this paste is done when the oil starts leaving from the sides of the pan and it doesn't really stick to the onions or tomatoes. That's when you know the paste is done, and then you can turn off the gas. Now when it comes to storing the onion tomato paste, what you can do is, I have these small IKEA boxes or I have these small storage boxes. I just portion it out depending on how many people are at home. So if I'm alone, then I just make single portions and I freeze them. And whenever I want to cook something, when I come back from work and I just want a quick meal, maybe a stir-fried chicken or a Paneer Butter Masala, I just take it out of the freezer, I thaw it, and then I add the paneer, I add the spices, and my meal is ready. Now as you can see, the veggie is getting slightly mushy, the tomato skin is peeling off, so it's almost done. I'm just going to give it a few more minutes. At this stage, you can add any Indian spices that you want, like turmeric, or you can add chili powder, but I really wouldn't prefer to do that because then it alters the taste of my final gravy. Because for example, on some days if I don't want a spicy gravy, then I'm already stuck with the chili powder. So I just like to leave this plain and then add it when I'm cooking, add the spices when I'm cooking. Alright, this is pretty much done. I'm just going to get the blender out. Okay, I can see the oil on the sides of the pan. So I'm just going to turn off the gas and get ready to blend this. Now, of course, if you have more time on hand, you can let this cool to room temperature, which is advisable. You really don't want to put hot things in the blender. But if I'm in a hurry, I just put this in front of the fan for a few minutes or under the fan, depending on whether you have a ceiling or a stand fan. And then once it cools down, I add it to the blender. At this point, we have about 7 minutes left on our timer. So I'm just going to take this out, cool it under the fan, and then I'm going to bring it back and blend it. Okay, so now the mixture has cooled down slightly and I've added it to the blender. I've also added a splash of water just so that the blending becomes easier. And because the mixture is slightly warm, I'm not going to put this lid on it. I'm just going to put a cloth on it so that the whole thing doesn't implode. Alright. Now we just need to blend this to a smooth puree and it's good to be stored. And it's ready. So here we have the classic onion tomato paste, which Indian cooking cannot do without, and soon even you won't be able to do without it once you realize how versatile this is. Obviously the color of this paste depends on the kind of tomatoes you have. In India I've seen the tomatoes really rich and plump and red, so obviously this paste is much more red in color. Also, like I said earlier, this gravy freezes really well for up to 3 months in your freezer. Obviously you need to thaw it well before you want to cook it, and it keeps in the fridge for up to 4 to 5 days. So yeah, enjoy! I really hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to send me your feedback or share your comments with me once you try this recipe, or you can even send me any recipes that you'd like me to try. As you can see, we accomplished a lot in 20 minutes, and these recipes are bound to please anyone who eats them. So don't forget to like my video and subscribe to my channel. This is Chef O'Clock saying bye. See you guys next week.